Welcome to the show. Good to have you with us here another week, especially with this unseasonably warm weather we've been having here for February. This week, later on the show, I have guests with me, Rob Van Dyne, Joe Monahan from Wheelhouse Creative, talking about how a commercial gets made on television, from concept to production to placement on the air and which show it's going to run on. Actually a process that many people don't know how it actually works. But first, we're going to talk about some of our usual features, and I want to start out with a community event this week, and that is Broadway at the Capitol. I had the pleasure of going down to the Capitol Theater in Wheeling this week to see Mamma Mia, and what a fantastic show it was. I took my kids, and they really enjoyed it. My wife and I had a great time, and to see the theater so full of people and to be enjoying the show here in downtown Wheeling was really a great thing to see. But not just that particular show, it's a great lineup that's in place for the rest of this season as well. In March, The Illusionists will be there, which is some type of magical show that I'm looking forward to seeing. And then Annie, always a favorite of the adults and kids alike, will also be on tap for the month of April. And then in May is the Broadway spectacular Rent, which has been very popular for a number of years. So just a great lineup that was put together this year for Broadway at the Capitol. At heart, I'm kind of more of a sports guy, but I like to have some other parts of culture to my life in addition to going to sporting events. So what a great way to do it through those shows. So I encourage everyone, if you want to go out and catch a great show, this year is a really excellent opportunity to do it in downtown Wheeling at the Capitol Theater. So kudos to Denny Magruder and his staff for putting together a great lineup this year. Next, our quote of the week, and this week is something that comes from really a long time ago, from St. Thomas Aquinas, and I actually put this on a comment to someone's Facebook post this week because I find it to be particularly true, and St. Thomas Aquinas said it, and have a lot of obviously respect and admiration for St. Thomas Aquinas. So the quote is this: "There is nothing on this earth more to be prized than true friendship." There's nothing on this earth more to be prized than true friendship. And I think the words true friendship are what really resonate with me, because there could be friends and then there are true friends. And when you look at true friends, they're the ones that are happy for you when you succeed. Even if it means your success is greater than their success, they're still happy for you. And on times when your back's up against the wall or things are down for you a little bit, they're there for you anyway. And that's what being a true friend is all about. So I think those words spoken hundreds of years ago by St. Thomas Aquinas are even more true today in the world of technology, social media, oftentimes bullying that we see on whether it be with kids or adults alike, that true friends are needed more than ever. So it's really important to identify who are those true friends and what does it mean to have a true friendship. And something that I really talk to my kids about, and when I see one of my own kids being a good friend to another kid, that makes me happier than anything they do, any achievement they may have. So everybody should keep that in mind, know who your true friends are and be a true friend to others as well. Next, the legal tip for this week. And this one is something that doesn't really pertain to an area of law that I practice in regularly, have done it many years ago in the past, but that's the area of criminal law. It's just not an area that my practice focuses on, but 10, 12 years ago, I did do a few criminal cases, sometimes for close friends that have a brush with the law, and a couple of high-profile things that I was involved in for former clients or relatives of former clients. But the tip is this: don't speak to the police without having a lawyer present. And that may seem kind of obvious to some people, but to many it's not, because what may start off as a simple thing where you're thinking, well, I didn't do anything wrong, I'll talk to the police, I don't need to have a lawyer here. There may be something that you don't even know is a violation of the law or breaking the law that you may have done, or that you may implicate someone else or yourself in some way. And you have rights under the United States Constitution, to have a lawyer present when you're speaking to the police. So it's good to, utilize those rights. Even if you feel that you did nothing wrong, it's important to talk to a lawyer. Make sure that you're protecting yourself, protecting your loved ones, knowing what you do and don't have to do, what you do and don't have to say. We've seen so many instances over the years where people are wrongfully accused of doing something, where sometimes decades later DNA evidence clears the person, but initially they were charged and sometimes even spent years and years in prison. So make sure that you do everything you need to do if the police ask to speak to you for some reason, to make sure that you're protecting your own constitutional rights and knowing what you can and should and shouldn't do if you've come into that type of situation. Hopefully you don't, though. We're going to need to take a break. When we come back, I'll be speaking with my guests this week, Rob Van Dyne and Joe Monahan from Wheelhouse Creative, all about TV commercials, the concepts, how they're made, and how they're put on the air. Stay with us on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration has been restoring homes after disasters for nearly 4 decades. Through that experience, we present Panhandle Custom Homes, Kitchens, and Baths. We handle your entire project, from concept to completion, working with you every step of the way. From the budget-minded upgrade to a fully custom remodel, you can trust the Panhandle name. Panhandle Custom Homes, Kitchens, and Baths. Welcome home.
I was the oldest of 9 children, so as a result of that, I grew up fighting battles for my brothers and sisters, and we grew up in some pretty tough neighborhoods. I saw juveniles and women being mistreated, and I thought that it would be a wonderful thing to be able to fight for people that were less fortunate and that couldn't fight for themselves. The thing that I enjoy still is helping people and fighting fights that other people sometimes weren't able to fight themselves.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Welcome back to the show. This is my favorite time of each week when I have guests with me. And this week I actually, a unique setup for this show. The first time ever 2 guests at the same time on the show, causing, a little bit of an issue for our guy behind in the control room, Mike. But Mike does such a fantastic job. He's got them both here. So we've got 2 chairs, we've got 2 guests. Rob Van Dyne, Joe Monahan, thanks for both being here this week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Well, okay, so what we want to talk about here are TV commercials, because everyone sees them on their TV. You turn on the tube and you go to commercial break, and people may wonder what all goes into making a TV commercial. And you guys are both working at Wheelhouse Creative. Rob, been there since the start, since the agency was formed a couple years ago. Joe, longtime owner of Shooters Production over in Martins Ferry, but now for the past 4 or 5 months, a part of Wheelhouse Creative, and taking and bringing your talent, so to speak, to the agency, like LeBron took his to South Beach. So, but let's talk about this process a little bit. People see these commercials on the air, and some of the ones that you guys have been a part of, whether it be from my firm, Bordas and Bordas. You see the spots in the Super Bowl, for example. You see things with Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, where some of the coaches down at WVU are involved, and Danoon Lumber, and some of the other ones that are on the air that people say, hey, that's a Wheelhouse commercial. First of all, the concept behind these. Rob, I'll start with you. You deal with the clients, as an account executive, as the vice president for media buying. So you have some different hats you have to wear. But one of the things you have to start off with, I guess, is what the heck does the client even want?
Right. The process is we identify who they're trying to reach, who the consumer is, the end consumer of their product is going to be. That then goes about in determining what's the best vehicle, be it TV or billboards or whatever. But then we decide that audience, how do we go about crafting the message to reach that audience? And then that's where we bring in the production folks and have our creative meeting, and I kind of give them the perspective of this is who we're trying to reach, what's the best, most creative way we can catch their eye.
And Joe, then when it comes to you, of course, you're the guy that's got to put some creativity to it and say, okay, here's how we can do that. And sometimes you want to do something that maybe nobody's ever seen before, and that's a challenge.
Sure, it's always been a challenge, but the one thing I do like about production, I've always liked about production, is that it's not formulaic. It's not the same thing over and over again. So each client has their own story. Each method of doing it is a little bit different. So, and it works a lot with Rob does on the on the broadcast end, finding out what the client wants to say first of all, and then it's about coming up with a concept, the way to tell their story, so to speak. And that's the part where the formula, there is no formula for it. So a lot of times we'll do it with brainstorming. But a lot of times it can be just one of those eureka moments. I'd be walking with my daughter down the aisle of a grocery store and something pops into my head. I got it, just like that. So there's no way of going about it. It just kind of comes along whenever it comes along. So anybody that tells you, oh yes, we do it this way and this way and this way, It isn't like that at all. It just kind of happens. So.
You know, things have, you've been doing this for a couple decades now, and things have changed and evolved. I mean, use of drones now, for example, which you utilize with respect to, I mentioned panhandle cleaning and restoration. There are spots with the coaches, Dana Holgerson, where you see the, kind of zooming down into the stadium. I mean, that's a drone type shot for that.
Sure, and I mean, the drones are, as you know, a relatively new thing. We used to have to do these things with camera cranes, something that went 25 feet in the air, and now a lot of times you don't have to do it that way. The drone can pretty much go anywhere that you can want it to go without a lot of setup time and that sort of thing. So in a lot of ways, it's replaced camera crane shots a lot. And I think we've seen 3 or 4 formats pass over the last 6 or 7 years. So it's always constantly changing, it's always evolving, and it's, again, that's the part of it I like. It's never the same.
Of course, one of the cool things that you have and that you utilize in the course of your work at Wheelhouse is a giant studio with a green screen that it's probably the biggest in the valley, I would think, without question. But it's basically an entire almost warehouse that has a green screen, so you can actually show vehicles driving through the woods if you want, or something of that nature, because the green screen's so big.
Yeah, it allows us to do things that might otherwise be too expensive to do for real, too dangerous to do for real, not feasible somehow. Everybody's familiar with the green screen as opposed to news or weather kind of thing. Everybody's kind of familiar with that. The way we use it is to put you in worlds that don't exist, put objects in that don't exist. And so just to kind of take it to that next level, that stuff that you might see more with national level productions. Okay, so if it's not there and we can't afford one, well, we can put it in. So it just expands what we're able to do to a degree that I don't think you see very often in the Valley.
Rob, one of the things you alluded to was how you have to work with the production folks, and I'm sure there are times where there's got to be some give and take there as well, because you've got to communicate. You're dealing with the client on a regular basis. You have to let the production team know here's what the client wants. They may have their own idea of what would be creative and would look cool, but there's that back and forth where you've got to really work together with the production team to produce the end result.
Right. And in most cases, Joe will agree, I do most of the taking. And again, where it comes down to a balance of budget that we have available and making sure that we always stay on message. That's one of the things that I just continue to emphasize with all our clients is let's not get so involved in producing the 10 Commandments as a Cecil B. DeMille spectacular and not get across the message of what we're trying to sell, or what the message that we're trying to craft and deliver for the client.
We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about how television commercials are made and how it's determined which shows you'll see them on when you're watching your television. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
I was the oldest of 9 children, so as a result of that, I grew up fighting battles for my brothers and sisters, and we grew up in some pretty tough neighborhoods. I saw juveniles and women being mistreated, and I thought that it would be a wonderful thing to be able to fight for people that were less fortunate and that couldn't fight for themselves. The thing that I enjoy still is helping people and fighting fights that other people sometimes weren't able to fight themselves.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Danoon Lumber is proud to be the sponsor of the Wheeling Chamber of Commerce Home and Garden Show, February 10th, 11th, and 12th at Westbanco Arena. Stop by their display and see for yourself the beauty and affordability of natural hardwood moldings and paneling. Danoon now also features quality Amish-made furniture, including rockers, tables, chairs, and benches. Better grade, better selection, better price. Danoon Lumber.
Welcome back to the show. I'm speaking with my guests this week, Rob Van Dyne and Joe Monahan from Wheelhouse Creative. We're talking about how a television commercial is made from concept to production and to how it goes on the air and how it's determined which shows it will be seen in. So let's talk about that a little bit. Rob, you're the guy when it comes to media placement. You determine this particular TV commercial for this client is going to go into this show. And what's the process that's involved with that?
It goes back to identifying initially with the client who the specific target audience is. So if it's a female or if it's a male, Depends on the market. If we're buying in Pittsburgh or in Charleston, or if we're buying here in Wheeling, that helps determine what the vehicle is. But again, then we rely on Nielsen ratings, and also on the psychographics of the viewer to find out which particular shows a woman 49 years old that may have a tendency that she likes to drive a particular brand of automobile, that these are her viewing habits. So that information is available out there. So we look at that information and then try to match it up with the programming of the stations. And again, we go off the Nielsen ratings, factor that in with the budget, and that's typically how I go about trying to put together schedules for clients.
Yeah, you talked about the budget. Obviously, it's more expensive to place a television commercial in, well, let's go with the extreme, the Super Bowl,
right,
than it would be in a show that's running at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. There's a big difference there.
Right, but and again, when you look at this past Super Bowl, which I found is interesting, that Pittsburgh in the Ohio Valley was the #1 market for viewership for the Super Bowl. And when you think that you can buy a 30-second spot and hit almost 70% of the households with one 30-second commercial, you better make sure you're spot on with your creative, which I think we were with the spots that we ran. But I mean, it's the reach that you can still get with broadcast TV is still phenomenal.
There were a lot of people out there rooting against Tom Brady here in the Valley,
Yes.
I think, in Pittsburgh. So
I think.
It didn't turn out that way. But and a lot of people rooting for C.J. Goodwin, of course, in the Falcons as well. But, Wheelhouse is actually, despite being a relatively young company, only a couple years old, has won some Crystal Awards for television commercial production from the West Virginia chapter of the Public Relations Association, I guess it is. And that's something to really be proud of, but that's a competitive process.
Very much so. And again, it involves all the agencies in the state. And in our first year, and we had only been in existence for probably 3 months, going against the larger so-called powerhouses of West Virginia with the Charleston agencies and some Morgantown agencies, and then have us walk away with one of the top awards, which was the TV Creative, really felt good, and it's because of this guy and the crew that he's got there.
Well, Joe, let's talk about your background in this a little bit. I mentioned former owner of Shooters Production, and had that company for quite some time before basically bringing your entire team into Wheelhouse. And how do you get into something like this in the first place? And then how do you become accomplished at it like you have done?
Well, I wish I could tell you that yes, I've always wanted to do this, but that wasn't the case. I actually went to college to be for veterinary medicine, is what I started out in, and I also had a love of football. So one of the things I grew up watching was all the NFL films, John Facenda narrating, the Super Bowls and that sort of thing. So we started out, we were playing the intramural in the intramural league, and one day I had a cousin of mine shoot some stuff. I said, I'm gonna sit down and edit this, NFL film style. And so I started doing that, and we kept building on it, and then one day I got up at 9 a.m. and I started to do my editing, and I looked at my watch the next time when I thought it was like 10 minutes. It was 10 o'clock at night. Hadn't moved from that spot, hadn't eaten, hadn't done anything. So I thought, I think I like this, so, and then people start saying, well, you guys do this, right? So why don't you shoot my, whatever, a wedding, give me a TV commercial. And then it just starts building from there. It's like, well, we did that, so now we can afford to buy another computer system. Maybe we need to buy a better camera, and it just kind of ballooned from there. So, a lot of what we've done, I had classes in college that did some things, but a lot of it is self-taught, working on the job, along the way. So you pick up a lot of things, and you work with a lot of professionals, and they teach you things. You have one on staff that, I consider to be a mentor of sorts, and so you just learn from everyone you can, and you just keep plugging along.
Now able to do some really cool things with special effects, animation, things of that nature.
Yes, and we like to integrate that stuff when it's necessary. Not every concept calls for special effects and adding things that aren't there. But on the more creative end, a lot of the stuff, some of our higher concepts require things like that to be able to tell the story. So we don't just do it, just because it looks cool. We do it because it furthers the story along. And if we can get stuff like that and show clients that, this really can be done, because I think, especially in the Valley, a lot of people don't know the kind of things that can be done and that Wheelhouse can do now. And we're always on a mission to kind of take it to that next level and show that, yeah, you can do this. You don't have to go to New York. You don't have to go to Pittsburgh necessarily. You can get that done right here, and we have a team that's capable of doing that.
Believe it or not, once upon a time I was on an NFL film segment.
Really?
I'll have to show you sometime, yeah. Well, I appreciate you being here today, Joe. Rob, I appreciate you being here to talk to our viewers about how a TV commercial is made and what goes into determining where it shows up on their screen. And thanks for all the good work you do there at Wheelhouse Creative, and the good work you do for the many businesses here in the region.
Thank you
for having us.
We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll be talking sports. A lot of professional sports to talk about this week. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
It's time again for the Tri-State Home and Garden Show, March 3rd, 4th, and 5th at the Florian Center in Wintersville. Showcase your products and services to thousands of potential customers. Contact Rob Van Dyne or Brandy Wallagura at Wheelhouse Creative to reserve your booth today.
Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration has been restoring homes after disasters for nearly 4 decades. Through that experience, we present Panhandle Custom Homes, Kitchens, and Baths. We handle your entire project, from concept to completion, working with you every step of the way. From the budget-minded upgrade to a fully custom remodel, you can trust the Panhandle name. Panhandle Custom Homes, Kitchens, and Baths. Welcome home.
It's time again for the Tri-State Home and Garden Show, March 3rd, 4th, and 5th at the Florian Center in Wintersville. Showcase your products and services to thousands of potential customers. Contact Rob Van Dyne or Brandy Wallagura at Wheelhouse Creative to reserve your booth today.
Welcome back to the show. It's time to talk sports. I'm going to start off this week with something that's kind of different. I mean, we see it every once in a while. It's going on this week in Pittsburgh, and that's the Stadium Series. The Penguins are going to play the Philadelphia Flyers at Heinz Field on Saturday evening. Just kind of cool to see those outdoor hockey games, although you have to wonder if they're going to have some issues because of this weather we're having. In the 60s and 70s, supposed to be, I think, 75 this week, even, different days. And are there going to be issues keeping the ice proper outside on Saturday evening? But should be fun to watch. Just hope that the ice is the way that it's supposed to be and that none of the players should get injured. But always fun to have that type of unique event where it's outdoors, a different type of hockey. But a lot of the players in cold weather cities grew up playing pond hockey where it is outside. Of course, a little different because in the pond hockey, no boards, nothing of that nature. But still cool to see the game outside. Wish I could go. I've got other commitments that keep me from going, but definitely hope I get a chance to watch some of it on TV. Speaking of games that are a little bit different than they normally are, the NBA All-Star Game was last weekend, and these All-Star games, the Pro Bowl in football, the Major League All-Star Game, it's got me wondering at this point, is it even worth playing them anymore? I mean, these players really don't play the way the games are normally played. I mean, in the NBA All-Star Game, for example, I mean, hardly any defense played. I mean, guys throwing it off the boards and dunking the ball and getting out of the way for people coming down the court. Steph Curry at one point even laid down on the court by the foul line when the other team was on a fast break. And is it just really even basketball? I mean, it's fun to watch, but it's not basketball as we know it. So how much longer will these games go on? I mean, guys don't want to play in the NFL Pro Bowl because they don't want to risk injury. The Major League All-Star Game, I mean, used to decide who got home field in the World Series. They're going to do away with that because the players take it so relatively not serious that they don't want who gets home field to be decided based upon that game. So they actually put that in place to try to make it more serious so they would care. But, of course, it only ends up affecting 2 teams. So I don't think that these All-Star games and Pro Bowls, et cetera, will be around much longer as we go forward. They've been around for years, but I think they're going to go by the wayside. Joey Porter, Steeler assistant coach, has pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge stemming from the incident after the playoff game against Miami this year, where he was involved in an incident on the south side with the bouncer or the doorman at the bar and a police officer. The video's been released regarding that now, and he ended up pleading to a misdemeanor and a $300 fine. And a lot of people were upset about that, saying if he wasn't Joey Porter, wasn't an assistant coach, he wouldn't have gotten that type of treatment. But if you watch the video, it doesn't look altogether serious. I mean, for the most part of the video, there's a discussion going on. Joey Porter's lawyer has indicated he didn't even know the guy was a police officer. Joey's indicated that by the time 10 people were in the storm, he's just grabbing hands, and it so happens he grabbed the police officer by the wrist. But there were no punches thrown, no pushes, no shoves, anything of that nature. It doesn't seem like. So a little bit of shoving here and there with others, but hopefully one of the things that can be learned from this is that when you have too much to drink, you can do things and say things that you otherwise wouldn't say or do. Joey, not the most cool-headed guy to begin with, and you get yourself in that situation where you've had a little too much to drink and bad things can happen. So fortunately for him, it's just going to be a $300 fine, but maybe a lesson to be learned by everyone. Mountaineers basketball. A little scare for Bob Huggins this week. His defibrillator went off in the middle of the game and caused him to kind of go to his knees and really scared his players. You could tell from watching that game against Texas on Monday night. Mountaineers ended up winning that game, but the players really had a scare in the middle of it, and of course even the fans really scared by that. Hopefully Coach Huggins will be okay. 2 games coming up here now, a road game against TCU and a road game against Baylor on Monday night. I've been saying all year, keep an eye on the Mountaineers on the road. They need to show they can win away from the Coliseum, though they will finish the season off next Friday night at home at the Coliseum against Iowa State, but then tournament play will start. And in those tournaments, you have to be able to win away from home because you're not playing at home. So let's watch these 2 games on Saturday and Monday and see how the Mountaineers do, and we'll look back at that next week on the show. But Mountaineers really need to go out and get a win for sure on Saturday down in Texas. And then, of course, Monday, Baylor's a very highly ranked team that the Mountaineers have already knocked off once this year. But if they can do that again on the road, then that will say something to me because, letting that game slip by at Kansas, a couple weeks ago, big disappointment. So we'll keep an eye on that going forward. And also in the world of sports, big congratulations out there to the Wheeling Park High School girls swimming team for winning a state championship. Coach Pat Durkin and his crew, great job winning the title, going out there and obviously performed extremely well at the highest or the biggest event of the year. So congratulations to the Wheeling Park High School girls swimming team on capturing that state championship. Always makes the Wheeling community proud when one of our high schools can capture a state title like they were able to go down and do. That's all for this week. Hope you have a great weekend. Hope you have a great next week. We'll see you again next time here on the Jamie Bordas Show.